27th, 2016, Ms. Heard walked into a courthouse in Los Angeles, California to get a no-notice ex parte restraining order against Mr. Depp, and in doing so, ruined his life by falsely telling the world that she was a survivor of domestic abuse at the hands of Mr. Depp. Today, on May 27th, 2022, exactly 6 years later, we ask you to give Mr. Depp his life back by telling the world that Mr. Depp is not the abuser Ms. Heard said he is, and hold Ms. Heard accountable for her lies. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, as you probably know by now, my name is Camille Vasquez. On behalf of Mr. Depp, I want to thank you deeply for your time and your service over these last 7 weeks. After weeks of sitting in this courtroom, listening to testimony and looking at evidence, now it's time for you, the jury, to come to a decision. You have been entrusted with a serious task. What is at stake in this trial is a man's good name. Even more than that, what is at stake at this trial is a man's life. The life that he lost when he was accused of a heinous crime, and the life he could live when he was finally vindicated. Exactly 6 years ago today, on May 27th, 2016, Ms. Heard walked into court and filed a false report of domestic abuse against her husband of 15 months, Johnny Depp. The scene was a setup. She tipped off the paparazzi so they would be waiting. They knew exactly where she would pause, which side of her face to photograph. And the photos captured what she wanted them to see, the image of a battered woman. What the paparazzi did not know is that the dark mark on her face mysteriously appeared 6 days after last seeing Mr. Depp. It was a lie. She knew it, Mr. Depp knew it, and the multiple witnesses you heard from who saw her that week of May 21st, 2016, also knew it. But the world only saw what she wanted them to see. 2 years later, when promoting the biggest role of her career until this trial, Ms. Heard presented herself to the world as a public figure representing domestic abuse. The headline of the op-ed featured the term sexual violence, even though she had never before accused her ex-husband of such a heinous crime. Ms. Heard and her lawyers love to remind you of how the op-ed did not mention Mr. Depp by name. But Ms. Heard made sure that there would be no mistake about who she was referring to. She inserted 2 years ago, so the world would remember the photo of a battered woman, the mark on her face, standing outside the courthouse. And they would once again see Mr. Depp as the villain, this time in full swing of the Me Too movement. But what was happening behind closed doors was quite different from what Ms. Heard presented to the world. The exact opposite, in fact. There is an abuser in this courtroom, but it is not Mr. Depp. And there is a victim of domestic abuse in this courtroom, but it is not Ms. Heard. The evidence presented at this trial has shown that Ms. Heard is in fact the abuser, and Mr. Depp the abused. As you heard from Mr. Depp and multiple other witnesses that testified under oath at this trial, Mr. Depp experienced persistent verbal, physical, and emotional abuse by Ms. Heard during their relationship. And when their relationship was over, Ms. Heard inflicted the greatest and cruelest injury of all. She publicly and falsely named Mr. Depp as the abuser. Ms. Heard never thought she would be held accountable. Never thought that she would have to face
I would say the last year they were together, probably 80-90% of our sessions began with her crying. that would be increasing as it went on. Ironically, she has a little difficulty crying, acting-wise, so which a lot of us do. And so, yeah, we would have to work when we were doing it acting-wise.
There's no tears. She breathes in with the tissue instead of out with the tissue. This is bad fake crying. I swear the acting coach validated everything I've been saying since Amber took the stand. It's like a seal of approval saying, Janine Driver, you're right. This was bad crying. I'm sure Amber inside's like, I did do a bad job, didn't I? But I worked so hard on it.
Last week, I showed you an audio where you told Mr. Depp to tell the jury, tell the judge, tell the world that he is a victim of domestic abuse. Do you remember that?
That's correct.
And you testified you found it hard to believe that Mr. Depp would tell the world that he's a victim of domestic abuse, didn't you?
I said I find it hard to believe that he would do that knowing that he himself had beat me up for 5 years.
But he has told the world that he's your victim of domestic abuse, hasn't he?
Well, he started to say that only recently. He didn't make that claim up until very recently. So when we signed our divorce agreement and we signed a statement saying that neither party had ever said false claims for financial gain, it was relevant and important to me because I was the only one making the accusations. I was the only one making those claims. He wasn't doing that at the time, and he signed his name to it.
You didn't expect as many people to show up and testify on his behalf that did you?
Incorrect.
When you told this jury under oath that you never assaulted, when you told this jury under oath that you punched Mr. Depp because you thought of Mr. Depp pushing Kate Moss down the stairs, you didn't expect Ms. Moss to agree to testify that never happened, did you?
Incorrect. I know how many people will come out of the woodwork to be in support of Johnny.
So you think Ms. Moss needs to come out of the woodwork to testify for Mr. Depp?
Everybody who was around in the 90s and the early aughts knew that rumor. I had heard that rumor from multiple people. Of course, that's what flashed through my head when my violent husband not only swung for me, but all of a sudden swung for my sister. Of course I thought of that. I did not expect her to show up or not expect her to show up. It didn't matter. It doesn't change what I believed at the time when we were on the stairs and I thought he was going to kill my sister by pushing her down the stairs.
You told this jury under oath that Mr. Depp was aggressive and trashed a trailer in Hicksville. You didn't expect the manager of the Hicksville property, Morgan Knight, to come forward and testify that that wasn't true, did you?
Incorrect. I've already been through trials with this man. I know how many people will come out in support of him.
When you told this jury under oath that you had no idea that the paparazzi would be at the courthouse on May 27th, 2016, you didn't expect a TMZ employee to show up to testify that TMZ had been alerted that you would be at the courthouse and knew exactly which side of your face to take a picture of, did you?
I know how many people will come out and say whatever for him. That's his power. That's why I wrote the op-ed, is I was speaking to that phenomenon. How many people will come out in support of him and will fall to his power? He is a very powerful man, and people love currying favor with powerful men.
Currying favor and risking jail time for committing perjury?
Excuse me? I didn't hear your question.
You didn't hear my question?
Ms. Vasquez, if you do mind, please just repeat the question. I didn't hear you.
Curry favor and commit perjury in this courtroom?
I have seen
for a powerful man?
I have seen people do this time and time again. That's why I wrote the op-ed.
You didn't expect Ben King, the house manager in Australia, to show up from England. He flew from England to testify that Mr. Depp's fingertip was found exactly where he said it would be. Did you?
I have never heard Johnny testify to knowing where his finger was, or really, frankly, making a claim that he knew where it was when it was found. I've never heard Johnny claim that.
You didn't expect Keenan Wyatt.
Johnny has never actually said that.
It's heard.
And
I think the jury can.
Yes.
It's heard. There's no question pending. You didn't expect Keenan Wyatt, Mr. Depp's longtime sound technician, to show up and testify that Mr. Depp is not being fed lines through his earpieces, but instead music, did you?
Not that it matters much, but of course I did. I know how his employees treat him.
So you probably,
I know how his team treats him. Of course I expected that.
Okay, so you probably expected Isaac Baruch to come and testify for Mr. Depp, right?
I'm not sure I thought about that.
Yeah. But you didn't expect Mr. Baruch to weep for Mr. Depp. after what you've put him through and so many others with your lies.
I relate to Isaac because he and I are the only ones who cried on this stand.
Nothing further.
All right. Redirect.